You think owning a Chick-fil-A makes you rich. The line wraps the building every single day. The parking lot never empties. People wait 15 minutes in a drive-thru for a chicken sandwich when there's a Wendy's sitting empty right across the street. Surely, you think whoever owns that franchise is sitting on a small fortune. A business generating that kind of traffic has to be printing cash for its owner. Here's the detail that breaks that assumption before the first minute is, the operator running that store, the person you assume owns it, doesn't own the building, doesn't own the land, doesn't own the equipment, can't sell the business, can't pass it down to their kids for $10,000, less than the cost of a used Honda Civic. Chick-fil-A will hand a hand-picked operator control of a location generating over $9 million a year in sales. That number should stop you. $10,000 to run a $9 million business. Somewhere in that gap between $10,000 and $9 million sits an entire economic model most people have never bothered to question. So why would anyone build a business this good and then refuse to let the person running it actually own it? Why is a chain closed every single Sunday, out-earning competitors open 7 days a week? And what happens to an operator the day Chick-fil-A decides they don't want them anymore? By the time this video ends, the word owner is going to mean something completely different to you than it did 30 seconds ago. Let's take it apart. Picture the standard fast food franchise deal. You want to open a Burger King. You need $2 million or more in liquid capital just to qualify. You personally finance the real estate, the construction, the equipment, the inventory. You take on the debt, the risk, the years of build-out before you see $1 of profit. That's what owning a franchise means everywhere else. Chick-fil-A flipped it upside down. The company buys the land. The company builds the restaurant. The company owns every piece of equipment inside it. An approved operator pays $10,000 and steps in to run it. That's not a franchise in the traditional sense. It's something else entirely, wearing a franchise's clothing. And the moment you see that, you have to ask, if the operator isn't really buying a business, what exactly are they buying? Here's what it looks like from the outside. The ultimate side door into entrepreneurship. 10 grand, and you're running a location that could out-earn most small businesses in America outright. Sounds like the best deal in franchising, full stop. Now look at what the operator actually signs up for. Chick-fil-A takes 15% of gross sales off the top before profit is even calculated, what the company calls a service fee. Then, whatever's left after expenses, the company takes half, 15% of everything, plus 50% of what remains. Run that against a competitor. A typical fast food franchisor takes somewhere between 3% and 8% of gross sales, full stop. No additional profit split on top. Chick-fil-A's 15% royalty alone, on a $9 million location, works out to more than $1.3 million a year, flowing straight to corporate, before the 50-50 profit split even begins. So the $10,000 entry fee story was never the real number. The real number is what corporate quietly collects every single year, off the top, forever. The obvious next assumption, fine. Corporate takes a big cut, but the operator still walks away wealthy given how much volume moves through that drive-thru. More sales, more profit, everybody wins, and on paper, operator income does look strong. Typically, $200,000 to $240,000 a year for a location, doing about $4 million in sales. Respectable. Better than most restaurant management jobs by a wide margin. But look at what that income actually is. It's not a return on an investment. There's no equity being built. If the operator wants to retire, sell, or hand the business to their kid, they can't. The moment they walk away, the store, the goodwill, the customer base, all of it reverts entirely to Chick-fil-A. Decades of 80-hour weeks building a $9 million a year customer base, and the operator leaves with exactly nothing to show for it beyond what they've already been paid. That's not an owner's economics. That's an extremely well-compensated employee's economics, dressed up in the language of ownership. Compare it to a McDonald's franchisee, who might personally own 3, 5, 10 locations, building a portfolio worth tens of millions of dollars over a career, an asset that keeps paying long after they've stopped showing up to run the day-to-day. A Chick-fil-A operator, by contrast, is contractually limited to a single restaurant. No portfolio, no stacking locations, no compounding. The ceiling isn't just financial. It's structural, built directly into the agreement they sign. So if the operator isn't the one capturing the real value being built here, who is? Follow the real estate, and the picture snaps into focus. Chick-fil-A corporate owns the land under nearly every location. It owns the building. It owns the drive-through lanes, the kitchen equipment, the walk-in coolers, the entire physical asset. As each store's sales climb year after year, so does the value of that real estate and the royalty stream sitting on top of it. All of that appreciation, all of that compounding value, belongs to a single privately held company controlled by one family. Meanwhile, the operator, the person clocking 60-hour weeks, greeting customers, training every single team member, accumulates none of it. They're paid handsomely for their labor. They build zero equity in the asset their labor is making more valuable every year. Here's the part that should genuinely surprise you. This structure isn't a flaw the company tolerates. It's the entire engine. Because the operator never owns equity, they can be removed if performance drops. No messy franchise termination lawsuits, no buyout negotiations, no protracted legal battle over who owns what. Corporate keeps total control over site selection, store design, even the exact wording used at the counter. And with over 60,000 applications a year for roughly 80 open spots, an acceptance rate lower than Harvard's, the company can afford to be this selective and still find the best operators. In America, lining up for the privilege of working without equity, the $10,000 isn't a purchase price. It's a filter. It exists to weed out anyone who isn't completely committed to running the store exactly the way corporate wants it run. Because the moment money stops being the barrier to entry, obedience to the system becomes it instead. Now here's the twist that should really mess with your sense of the business. Chick-fil-A is closed every single Sunday, every location, every week, forever. By the company's own estimate, that single policy forgoes roughly $1 billion in potential sales industry-wide every year. And yet, Chick-fil-A generates more revenue per store than McDonald's, more than Starbucks, more than almost every other chain in the country, working one fewer day than nearly all of them. Think about what closing on Sunday actually does to a customer's brain. Scarcity isn't a bug here, it's the entire mechanism. You can't have it whenever you want it. That single restriction turns a fast food sandwich into something you plan around, crave in advance, and rush to get before the doors close Saturday night. Every other chain is available every day, so every other chain becomes invisible. The one door that closes is the one people think about. Layer the human element on top. Dual-lane drive-thrus. Staff standing outside taking your order on a tablet in the rain. Genuine, trained hospitality. My pleasure instead of you're welcome, repeated by every single employee. Every single interaction, until it stops feeling like a script and starts feeling like a culture. That culture isn't an accident of nice employees. It's manufactured deliberately by a company that handpicks the person running each store specifically because they'll enforce that culture without corporate needing to watch over their shoulder. And customers pay for it, willingly without noticing. Chick-fil-A's average transaction value runs around $12.80, the highest of any major quick-service chain in the country. Not because the sandwich costs dramatically more than a competitor's burger, because the experience around it has convinced people to add the drink, the sauce, the second side, the treat for the kid in the back seat. The same psychological permission that makes a $5 coffee feel justified at a chain with comfortable chairs. Hospitality isn't the nice part of the business. It's the upsell mechanism, wearing a smile. Every model this tightly controlled has a fuse burning somewhere. Here's Chick-fil-A's. The entire structure depends on an endless supply of operators willing to work 60-hour weeks for six-figure pay, in exchange for zero equity and a company that can end the relationship without the entangled legal fight a traditional franchise termination would trigger. That trade only works as long as operators believe there's nothing better available. But growth itself is starting to strain the model from a different direction. The company's highest volume locations are now pushing past $20 million a year, a scale that's forcing corporate into 4-lane, 2-story drive-through buildings just to physically process the traffic. Even so, blended average unit sales showed signs of plateauing recently, alongside a small dip in per-unit sales growth, a signal the model may be approaching a ceiling on how much volume a single physical drive-through however cleverly engineered, can actually absorb. And there's a subtler risk underneath all of it. The same tight, centralized control that makes the brand consistent also makes it entirely dependent on one family's continued willingness to run it this way. Unlike a public company answering to shareholders demanding expansion at any cost, Chick-fil-A has stayed deliberately private, deliberately slow-growing for decades. That discipline is the moat, and also the single point of failure, resting on the preferences of people, not a system built to survive without them. So where does this go next? Growth is accelerating, not slowing. The company added roughly 179 new stores in a recent year alone. Still tiny compared to McDonald's 13,000-plus U.S. locations, but enough to keep pushing system-wide sales past $22 billion annually, trailing only McDonald's and Starbucks, despite operating a fraction of their footprint. The next battleground isn't more locations, it's throughput. Elevated, two-story drive-thrus with conveyor systems delivering food from a kitchen above the cars below. Dedicated mobile through lanes for app orders. Drone footage studying traffic patterns down to the second. The company isn't trying to open more stores as fast as competitors. It's trying to squeeze more revenue out of the stores it already has. Because each new location is expensive, real estate corporate has to buy outright. Not capital some franchisee is fronting, which means the operator role itself is quietly getting harder to land and harder to keep. As stores get bigger, more automated, and more scrutinized on throughput metrics, the bar for who gets handed the keys to a $10,000 opportunity worth millions in annual revenue keeps climbing. There's a second frontier opening up too, international expansion. For decades, Chick-fil-A stayed almost entirely domestic, a strange restraint for a chain this profitable. That's starting to change, with a small but growing number of overseas locations testing whether the same closed Sunday, hospitality-obsessed formula translates outside the American South. If it does, the operator selection process that already rejects the overwhelming majority of applicants domestically is about to get exported to an entirely new pool of hopefuls. On a much bigger stage, picture two people, both in fast food, both working just as hard. Path 1. The traditional franchise owner. A Wendy's or a Taco Bell operator who put up $500,000 to $2 million of their own capital, financed real estate, took on debt, absorbed years of build-out risk. If the location succeeds, they build real equity, an asset they can sell, refinance, or pass to their children. If it fails, they absorb that loss personally, sometimes catastrophically. Path 2. The Chick-fil-A operator. $10,000 in. Zero real estate risk. Zero construction debt. A near-guaranteed six-figure income if selected, and if the location performs, working inside a system engineered for consistency down to the greeting at the counter. But no equity, no ownership, no asset to sell, just labor, extremely well compensated, inside someone else's machine. One path bets everything on ownership and accepts the risk that comes with it. The other bets everything on being selected and trades ownership for security. Neither is a scam. They're just two entirely different products being sold under the same word. Franchise. Run the numbers over a 20-year career and the divergence gets sharper still. The traditional owner who successfully builds and sells a portfolio of locations can walk away with a multi-million-dollar asset, a business they can borrow against, refinance, or leave to their children. The Chick-fil-A operator, even after 2 decades of six-figure income and 60-hour weeks, retires with whatever they've saved from salary alone. The exact same position as a well-paid executive at any other company. Just wearing an apron instead of a suit. So go back to that line wrapping around the building. That parking lot that never empties. It was never really a franchise you were looking at. It's a company that figured out how to keep 100% of the asset value. The land, the building, the brand, the customer relationship, while paying someone else extraordinary money to run it flawlessly, without ever having to hand over an ounce of equity to do it. A closed Sunday isn't a sacrifice. It's the scarcity that makes 6 other days worth more than anyone else's 7. And a $10,000 entry fee was never a bargain. It was the price of admission into working brilliantly for a machine you'll never own a single share of. Next time you're sitting in that drive-thru line, watching an employee in the rain take your order off a tablet with a genuine smile on their face, remember what you're actually witnessing. That's not an owner building their own American dream. That's one of the best-run employees in the country, making someone else's dream extraordinarily profitable. One sandwich, one Sunday off at a time.